We have some super editing, so we can edit out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, scoot over a little bit. We're a little too close. Don't
I know. They're like, these guys are close.
Well, my special friend Ryan. All right, let's do this in 4, 3, 2. Welcome to 3rd and 21, a show where we talk about college football and try to have a little fun. Today I'm with my friend Ryan, who's going to talk about the big, bad Georgia Bulldogs in the 2017 edition. So thank you for being here, Ryan.
You're welcome. Honored to be here.
Great. Always like to start off, Ryan, with this. When did you fall in love with Georgia football?
That's a great question. I grew up a Notre Dame fan. And when Rocket Ishmael and those guys were there.
Really?
Yeah, and one of the reasons I was we watched a game, one of the national championship games, and I love the fight song, and that in Michigan are just phenomenal fight songs. And my dad was always a Georgia fan. He went to Georgia State, but always a Georgia fan. And then as I got older, I started remembering times where I would go with him, and this was in the days of the big brim hats and junkyard dogs, junkyard dogs and all that. And we would go tailgate, and I didn't know it was called that at the time. We would just fellowship. And so I would say I really got into it in high school. And then once I found out I was going to Georgia, I went to Georgia for both undergrad and law school. And so it was in high school that I really got into it. But of course, in college, it just exploded.
Right. So the Georgia-Notre Dame game this year is going to take a little more. Where are you at with Notre Dame nowadays?
I stopped liking them when I was probably 12 or 13, but I've always there's a few hallowed halls that I've always wanted to see.
Absolutely.
I went out and saw a game at the Rose Bowl, and what a different experience. They were playing Colorado State and
USC.
Colorado. UCLA was playing Colorado State, and. It was USC playing Colorado State, and just a totally different experience. We were there, very, very calm, almost Ole Miss-like, very genteel tailgating, and it was just like nothing I'd ever experienced. Very, very cool to see. But the game was surreal. People were talking, and I'm trying to watch the game, even though I didn't really care about USC or Colorado State. I'm trying to watch the game. Everybody's talking and stuff, and I wanted to say, stop talking, I'm trying to watch the game. But I saw the Rose Bowl. I've always wanted to go to South Bend, and in fact, we are going to South Bend. Nice. We're going to drive up Wednesday night, go to Chicago, go to South Bend Friday and Saturday, so I'm excited about that. But it is a special time, not only because of the national championship game in 1980, but also because we were a hair's breadth from it in the SEC championship game a few years ago. And had we not lost, I think everybody widely knows that the two best teams in the country that year were Alabama and Georgia, and whichever team won, which we were 6 yards from, was going to wipe the floor with Notre Dame. So I couldn't be more excited. I'm a little, I don't like the fact that even though they only won 4 games last year, that everybody's chalking it up to a victory. I'm always concerned about that because they're going to be a much better team this year.
Especially there.
Yeah. But I can't wait, touchdown Jesus and just the history of that place. I can't wait.
Excellent. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to break down the 2017 Bulldogs. Don't go anywhere. Good job, man.
Thanks. This is fun. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're just going to talk about
I'm just
a conversation. So we'll just talk about the Bulldogs 2017, maybe hit a couple of highlights on the schedule.
Perfect.
Take another break and come back and do 5 things.
Okay. And we can talk, if you want to talk recruiting, I can do that or not. Yeah. Whatever you want.
You know what? We'll have another show on recruiting.
Perfect.
Okay. So we're coming back in 5. Welcome back to 3rd and 21. I'm your host, Kemper, where we talk about college football and try to have a little fun. This segment is brought to us by Revis Law Firm, business litigation, workman's comp, personal service. Revis, R-E-A-V-I-S, lawfirm.com.
That's right. Look us up on avvo.com, avvo.com.
Okay, excellent. So, on the 2017, as a fan, and all you're speaking of is a fan here, give me what you would blow your expectations out of the water, what you realistically expect, and what would be a terrible disappointment.
In terms of one-loss record?
However you want to answer the question.
I am always cautiously optimistic, meaning if I think that we're really going to win 9 to 10 games, I try to set my expectations at about 8 because it's so painful. It's so painful to have unmet expectations. But I am as cautiously optimistic about this team as I've been in years. Jacob Eason coming in as a much more seasoned quarterback. I've liked what I've heard about his offseason work. I've liked what I've heard about Terry Godwin and Javon Wims and Michael Chigbu and some of these other guys, as well as some of the younger pups coming up. We returned the running backs. Our defense is going to be solid. Offensive line is going to be much improved, especially 3 or 4 games in when Isaiah Wilson and Andrew Thomas are more seasoned, and Ben Cleveland also could be better than he redshirted last year. So the thing that concerns me is that we have so many away games. We play almost everybody away in our home schedule, and as a season ticket holder, this was even brought home to me even more when I got my tickets. Our home schedule is not very good. So to answer your specific question, I really, in my gut, believe that even if we don't catch any breaks, we're a 9-win team. And I believe that if we do catch a break or two, similar to the opposite of what happened last year with Tennessee and Vandy, if we do catch a couple of breaks, we could be a 10-win team, even an 11-win team. But, so in my mind, I'm thinking 8 or 9 wins. I really believe that anything less than 9 wins, we're going to miss out on some big-time recruits who are waiting. Justin Fields and some other guys are waiting to see how we do.
I know
but I'm praying
he
for
loves
10 wins.
recruiting. He follows recruiting during the season. So
in answer to your specific question, I'm thinking 9 or 10 wins, but it got to be 9, or else Kirby's going to start losing recruiting momentum. So people are going to start saying, "Great recruiter, not a great coach."
Speaking of Kirby, that's the next question. Your thoughts on Kirby as the coach? Were you for him, even though it was a foregone conclusion for the most part that he was going to be the coach? But at that point, were you like, "Man, he's the guy I want," and where are you at him with him now?
That is a great question. Let me give it some backstory. I was a big fan of Mark Richt, and I liked his Christian, the fact that he wasn't ashamed of his faith. I thought as a man of integrity, he was incredible. But I also felt like that as the decade, after about 10 years, his energy for recruiting went down. So I didn't have a problem so much with Georgia getting rid of him, because I did know, Kirby Smart was going to go to South Carolina, and my understanding is that basically they got a call that said, "We're not telling you what to do, we're just telling you he's about to accept the South Carolina offer," and Georgia said essentially, "That ain't happening." With the assumption, I didn't have a problem with Mark getting fired. I had a problem with the way Georgia did it. I thought it was just disrespectful. If they'd come in and said, which I think was true, "You lost some momentum in recruiting and you're losing close games and we don't like the trajectory and you hadn't won the SEC," and I'm fine with that. But to fire him and then come out with this 2-page letter about what an incredible guy, I didn't like that.
Right.
Moving on though to your question, there was not a doubt in my mind that Kirby was the right hire. From the time that I heard it, and it was everybody kind of knew it anyway, but from the time I heard it, the combination of him being able to sell, come to Georgia, and they call it the legacy of the G, which is come to Georgia, and you will be set in the biggest state in the Deep South. You'll be set in Atlanta or anywhere else you want to go for life. Not that I'm denigrating any other city, but I'm saying if you want to be set in Georgia, which is a great state, come to Georgia. And he can say that with authenticity because he can say, this is what happened to me coming here,
Absolutely.
And then to combine that with his recruiting knowledge specifically because, his father is a well-respected, long-time high school coach in Georgia. He's got so many ties in with the program. So, in summary, I couldn't be happier with him. I think he was exactly the hire that God had planned for our program, and I couldn't be happier with what he's done. And now it's just about the talk ending and doing something quality in terms of the football program.
Comment on this. I went back and watched some of the Georgia games from last year, and what I saw, was Jacob Eason has an incredible arm talent, I believe we call it now. I mean, laser beams, but the amount of drops. I don't know if you remember how many drops. There was one series against Ole Miss where we went first down drop, second down drop, third down drop.
Right.
Let's punt and try it again next time.
Yeah.
If Georgia's going to be successful, Easton's got to take the next step, but Georgia has to have receivers that can catch, and I'm the host. So if Georgia is to have a successful, their line has to get better as well.
Yeah, you're right on both counts. I mean, I think Jacob has done a good job, and Chaney has done a good job of both taking ownership for things outside of the drops, because you couldn't have said it better. And even Chigbu, even somebody who in practice doesn't drop a pass, from what I understand, had some horrible drops.
Yeah.
I think it was a combination. I think it was a combination that everybody felt so rushed. I mean, let's call a spade, okay? You're not supposed to have somebody from Rhode Island come in and be your starting left tackle. That's not, that says volumes about where your line is. So everybody was rushed. And when you combine that with Jacob not having a real full grasp of the playbook, and especially not knowing certain formations where the guys were going to go, you had, in addition to the drops, you had balls thrown too hard.
Absolutely.
which is I mean, Stafford had the same issue.
Sure,
if you can wing it, you wing it, but it's hard to catch. He was overthrowing people, and I'm not talking about overthrowing by 2 feet. I'm talking about overthrown by 1.5 yards. And then we didn't use the tight end enough. So first,
who is a terrific tight end.
Who is going to be, by all accounts, could be a top 15 pick, and Jacob could be a top 3 pick. So that answers your question about receivers. You're right, and I think it's a combination of issues. In fact, including that Chaney didn't use the tight end or the slot receivers enough. The second issue about the offensive line is one of my most exciting things for this year, especially because this coming year we could have the number 1 running back in the country in Zamir White.
Are we going?
Arguably,
are we going to recruiting?
For a second. Arguably, more important, the number 1 guard. They said that Jamari Sawyer is the best guard prospect in 15 years, and he's leaning Georgia's way. He played with Andrew Thomas at Pace, and then and potentially with Justin Fields, the number 1 quarterback in the country. So if Sawyer comes in, we've got Isaiah Thomas, we've got Isaiah Wilson, Andrew Thomas, Ben Cleveland, Jamari Sawyer. These young pups, as they grow, it's a new era.
Yeah.
It's a new era. And when you combine that with Trent Thompson and Roquan Smith on the defensive side, but in summary, you're exactly right. Drops and offensive line play smoked us.
Yeah. Smoked
us last year.
I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch of question marks on the defense. Defense
You're
looks
right.
solid. Front, too bad. Secondary has some questions, but I think the defense is not going to be the problem for Georgia this year.
Yeah, I agree. I was concerned about Trent Thompson when he went through those medical issues 6 months ago or so. I heard he got really lean, but then I got reports that he didn't get all that lean, and he's going to be a stud. Roquan Smith, when he decommitted from UCLA and came to Georgia, was so big. D'Angelo Gibbs is probably going to play the nickelback, which was one of the biggest needs. And I'm looking for Richard LeCount. What you said is right. We don't have a shutdown corner, and when Jamias Williams, I never understood why Jamias Williams chose South Carolina over Georgia, because he could have started this year. He is such a shutdown corner. He's basically in the honey badger mold, and he would have started, but he did go to South Carolina. We don't have anybody, and we might move Richard LeCount over there, but he's not a natural. So I agree with you. I'm worried about the corner position.
A good rush makes a secondary look a lot better than they necessarily
Well
are.
said.
You know?
And we should have. I mean, everybody's concerned about. Everybody's always been a little concerned about the motor on some of our defensive ends.
Mm-hmm.
They should be, but again, but sacks are not what they used to be. It used to be that, hey, you would look at sack totals, and that gave you a good barometer of how good your ends were. But now, half the plays, they're not even asked to rush necessarily, because there's so many spread open packages and there's so many dual threat quarterbacks. So, but anyway, I'm excited about it. I do think our defensive line is a strength, and they hit a year or two ago with David Marshall and all those guys. Basically, Julian Rochester is going to be a stud, and basically they had 4 or 5 defensive linemen in that class, and every single one of them, none of them were a bust. They're all either as good or better than expected, which is fantastic.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and play 5 things with Ryan. Don't go anywhere. Man, you know a lot, and you like recruiting, don't you?
I know, sorry, I had to mix just a little bit of that in there.
I mean, do you ever say, hey, listen, let's just enjoy the season. Recruiting's going to be what it's going to be. Or do you know who's coming?
Every day. That's what the podcast.
So do you know who's coming, like, on a given day? Like, oh man, this is going to be heavy recruiting.
I know. The podcast focuses a lot on that. It'll be, here's who's in this weekend. But what I do is I keep my eyes on 5 or 6 recruits that I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
And then so I always kind of look and see, okay, when
and where they're going to visit.
Recruit. Yeah, because the new early signing period is going to be amazing, because a lot of these guys are going to commit. In fact, I heard the other day that if somebody doesn't commit on the early signing period, that it's going to be so much the norm that if they don't commit by the early signing period and they're not a 5-star, then the coaches are going to be like,
man, we don't know if we got a spot.
We need you to make a decision ASAP, because we only got 4 more spots, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Sawyer, my point is Sawyer, White, and
hey, hold on, we're about to come in here. So listen, 5 things. You don't have to be short. Just keep it pithy.
Okay.
And whatever comes to your head. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's get back here. And welcome back to 3rd and 21, where we're talking about the big, bad Georgia Bulldogs. There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
All right, so I'm going to ask you 5 things. Just give me what comes to mind.
Okay.
I have ground transportation, airfare, hotel accommodations, and tickets to any game. Doesn't have to be Georgia. Any game.
Pro or college?
No, just
College.
college.
Okay.
Anywhere. Where are you going?
That is a great question. We've already talked about 2 of them, so I'm knocking the Rose Bowl and Notre Dame off the list. I've already seen Alabama, which with all those national championship banners. You know what I might say?
What's
this
that?
sounds bizarre. I might say, I'm not going to say Hawaii. I mean, of course, that's the one everybody wants.
Man, no, that's
but
a
you know what it might
legitimate
be?
answer. Huh.
It might be Boulder,
Yeah.
Because I mean that not for the game and not for the not for any of that, but for the pure beauty of having those Rocky Mountains behind it.
Nice
so,
one.
or it would either be that or University of Washington. And, again, purely because of the beauty.
The Apple Cup would be one that would be on my short cup. Yes. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Favorite all-time Georgia player?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go Herschel because everybody.
You answer it how you want.
Okay. Gosh, that is I got to say Pollock, man.
Ooh, nice.
I mean, I got to say Pollock.
Hey.
Christian, amazing person. And let me tell you why. I like hustle. And that guy played above his talent level. With his size and speed, he should never have done what he did. And so if you gave me more time, I might see somebody else, but right now
I think that's a great call. David. And I would watch him, and he would get double teamed and held almost every play.
That's right.
And still either make the play or disrupt it. He was incredible.
And you know what else he did? When other offensive linemen thought the play was over, his hustle would sometimes, if the play broke up, and then all of a sudden if they started coming back, he would come around, knock somebody out from behind when the offensive lineman thought it was long over.
And I know, and we'll move on, I
that.
know you remember the play against South Carolina.
Still one of my favorite plays of all time.
That was
one of my favorite plays of all time. It's like the old saying, I'm a big believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more of it I have, right?
He's a great example.
That's a great example of that. Yeah, it was an amazing play, and 50% of it was luck, but the other 50% was his pure motor.
Yeah. Okay, if you are creating the perfect day for Ryan based around a Georgia football game, what time is the kickoff?
Oh, wow. Oh, man. I will say, by way of context, I did go to a Death Valley game at LSU at night. Ooh, that was phenomenal. So it's going to be hard to beat a night game. I'll talk about home games in a minute, but it's going to be hard to beat a night game in LSU. Even though we lost that game, that was an amazing experience. So if you're asking away from Samford, that's what I would say. At home, I don't like noon kickoffs. And in the right environment, I'm going to say a night game because the best game